tried again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Lilia able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani. Around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal. Perry in the face. 1-1. Score! On the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
We have a podcast. It's
Yeah.
man, it's actually almost been a month, which is a sad thing.
Yeah.
We have
A few days shy.
Yeah, 4 days shy. We have some explaining to do, but we are back. We haven't been just taking a break, sitting back, doing nothing. I am finally about 95% back from being sick. I was sick for about 2.5 weeks. You'll notice Pat isn't here today because somehow I spread my sickness through the computer waves to Pat, and now he's sick.
Well, when you guys are FaceTime each other naked and kissing the camera on there, it transfers. I mean, you guys gotta be a little bit safer. That's all. Just safe.
Yeah, but hey, we're back. That's all that matters. We have a bunch of Ducks games to get caught up on. Don't worry, we're not going to recap every single one, including the game that just concluded a couple hours ago now, right? Ducks won 5-1 against the Vancouver Canucks, and I didn't catch most of the game, but the highlights confused me because the Canucks were wearing white jerseys at home. I think it has something to do with the Sedins. They were honoring the Sedins who just got their jerseys retired or something like that. But I got about halfway through the highlights before I realized it was a Canucks home game, and it wasn't until Pettersson's goal came up and the horn came on that I realized, this is in Vancouver.
I knew they were already in Vancouver. It didn't really bother me or anything like that. Where it threw you off. It threw you off that bad where you had to notate it.
Yeah. But we have a lot. We have a lot to get caught up on here. The Ducks over the last 10 games that we missed, technically 11 because of that postponed game against the St. Louis Blues. They went 5-3-2. Not bad. Better than what we'd seen for the Ducks a month ago when they weren't playing great. They're near the bottom. They're still near the bottom of the Western Conference, but playing above 500 and playing some pretty decent hockey along the way. Not too many blowout losses, really only one. And that was a game a couple nights ago against the Flames where they lost 6-0. Maybe it's a hard game to come off of, that game against the Blues where Jay Bouwmeester collapsed on the bench, and that's a lot of things that you got to deal with, especially as well. That's at home, it's in your home barn. It's never easy to kind of come back and bounce back from that. I don't want to say the 6-0 loss was only because of that, but it is tough for players to bounce back after something like that happens, especially to a guy like Jay Bouwmeester, that much of this team, especially guys like Ryan Getzlaf, know on a personal level. So it's a pretty tough experience for them to come back from that.
Yeah, and I was in there chatting on Discord with our Patreon people, and at the end of the game, I pretty much said I'm pretty much chalking this one up as I'm going to let you have this one. We're not normally that bad. We've been playing so well up into that. We were even playing well in the St. Louis game. The short amount of time that game went on. So I feel like their minds weren't quite in there, and they were making a lot of mistakes. And Calgary just played the night before, and they kind of sometimes when you play the night before, you're still going, you're still got that rhythm going, and when they jump out to a 4-0 lead in the first, I mean the Ducks are it's tough to get past that. I mean they played decently okay the rest of the way, but that first period was just too brutal to come back from.
Yeah, and there's been games like that this season, but let's quickly recap all the games up until today's game, and then we'll go a bit more in depth into today's performance against the Canucks. All the games we've missed here. This is going to show you how long we've been away. The last game, dating all the way back to when the Ducks played San Jose back in late January, they lost 4-2. Went on to beat Arizona 4-2, lost 4-3 to Tampa Bay. Back-to-back wins. I think that was the first time since November they had back-to-back wins, beating LA 3-1 and Ottawa 3-2. Continued the Eastern road trip with a 3-2 OT loss to Montreal and a 5-4 OT loss to Toronto, where Ondrej Kase got hurt off a hit from Jake Muzzin, which is apparently the flu, but it doesn't seem like it's the flu because Ondrej Kase has missed the last 4 games, including tonight's game against the Canucks. They went down to Buffalo 1-3-2. Obviously, the Blues game we just talked about, it was 1-1, I believe, near the end of the first after that game got postponed. Now rescheduled for March 11th. So that we've got at least a date for when that game's going to come back. I believe the score is going to be the same, and they'll probably play it out where they play 20, they play 20, and then the second 20 has the extra 7.
No, they're actually. Last I heard from it, and this was maybe a couple of days ago, that the way they're going to do it is the score is 1-1, and everyone's stats are still relevant, but they're just going to play a full game. So it just starts off at 1-1. And it's the first period, 20 minutes, and go. But everyone kind of keeps the same stats and kind of goes from there. But
Adam Henrique gets that extra goal. He's at 20, but technically 21. After
I don't know. I mean, did they already count it? Like, is that already in his stats?
I don't think so. I think because I think I saw Elliot Tiefer tweet about that earlier tonight. It might have been Eric Stevens saying that Henrique was actually at 20, but not at 20. So the goal. His 19th goal, which was technically his 20th, didn't count as his 20th, so his 21st was his 20th. I don't really know exactly how it works, but if those stats
weird.
count,
I mean, come across it.
Yeah, if that game counts, he has 21. If not, he has 20.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I know for sure they're keeping the stats. So whatever stats were there, whatever ice time was logged, whatever plus minus, because they're saying that about. Jay Bouwmeester is like, even if he doesn't play, he'll still get credit as a +1, and he played something like 7 odd minutes or something like that in the game, leading up to that point.
Yeah, I mean, we would hope he'd be back, but you don't really know. So I think he had he had surgery, something, an implant put in for his heart. So
to get his heartbeat back in a regular.
Yeah, I don't know the timeline for that, but hopefully he's back playing hockey at some point, right? So that's the goal, and then obviously Ducks versus Flames. That was a couple nights ago. They lost 6-0, and then that brings us to tonight, a little bit better, a rebound game in Vancouver, where the Ducks win 5-1. Let's go into this game a bit more. A couple different things stood out. Obviously, Adam Henrique doing what he's done kind of all season. He had 2 goals tonight, and one of them was an own goal off Troy Stecher for the first goal of the game. I think he tried to center it back out front, and Stecher had made the mistake of kind of going down and putting his stick on the ice, and Thatcher Demko wasn't happy to see that go off Stecher's stick into the back of the net.
Yeah, it goes right 5-hole through the goalie, and he was actually trying to hit Troy Terry on the back side of that, which also would have been a good play, but just hockey got smiling a little bit there on Henrique because it was just a perfect deflection going in, and the Ducks don't normally get those, so when they happen, it's either the only time we're going to get it for a really, really long time, or it's the start of something pretty good, like it's just going to be our game, because those don't go in for us ever. So it was good. Glad Henrique's doing it. Another 20-goal season. I think he's got 5 now in his career. Yeah. So model of consistency,
he just keeps getting it done. He's a 20 goal, 40 to 50 point guy every year. Like that's just what he's done, and there's value in that, and especially right now with the Ducks not having a ton of center depth behind Getzlaf and Henrique. It's nice to see Henrique just kind of being, like you said, that model of consistency and getting things done, because the Ducks need it. Not too many guys are scoring 20 this year. Henrique might not have a bunch of company when it comes to that. Maybe
Grant.
I was gonna say maybe the only guy who can catch him is the guy who got the second goal of the game for the Ducks, Derek Grant. This is all set up by Ryan Getzlaf, though, doing what he does best, proving he's one of the best passers to play the game still. That no look behind the back drop pass to Derek Grant, who I don't think he was even ready for it, because you see him receive it and he has to fumble for a second to get it onto his forehand and get it past Demko, but because of the way Getzlaf sold that, he had more than enough time. He puts it in the back of the net, and he's got 14 on the year.
Crazy, right?
Speaking of guys who could have value come the trade deadline, his name's been thrown out there a bit. We saw Blake Coleman of the New Jersey Devils go to Tampa Bay for Nolan Foote and a first-round pick earlier tonight. Derek Grant's one of those guys who, because of the season he's having, maybe he doesn't get that much, but he could get a lot more than people expect. I mean, Coleman had 20 goals and 12 assists. Derek Grant's kind of scratching just below that for the type of commitment he can, or type of offense he can provide. And he plays on the penalty kill, and he plays on the power play, obviously with the power play goal tonight, and he wins faceoffs. Like, this is a guy who could get a lot more value than I think Ducks fans expected him to get. If he was going to get anything at all.
Yeah, I think he'll fall under that underrated around the rest of the league. So they may not see all the extra little things that you're talking about, a good penalty killer, a good face-off guy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, anyone at the trade deadline is usually looking for either a name or someone that's really kind of putting up numbers. So if another team is very savvy and they've been watching and paying attention to what he can do, they could probably see the value in it. I would just hesitate as Bob Murray to make that trade, because I feel like we've done Derek Grant dirty already so many times, and it's just kind of like he's finally clicking. He's on the most consistent line that we have, and he's been doing above and beyond what anyone really expected him to do. And now it's kind of like, oh well, go play over here. We got assets for you. That's all you were to us. That sort of deal. I feel like that could maybe rub Derek Grant the wrong way. But then again, he goes and plays somewhere else. He always sucks, and then he comes back to us and seems to be elite center number one. So
he hasn't really gotten it done anywhere else. I mean, he's had a few different stints. Ottawa started his career there, went to Calgary for 15 games, Nashville for 6. Buffalo for 40, and then Anaheim for pretty much the rest of it, and then obviously Pittsburgh for that brief stint where he ended up signing in with the Penguins, and then came back to Anaheim in a trade. So it's 20 points now, 14 goals in 46 games for Derek Grant. There would be teams who will be interested in him, and you think earlier today, Andy Green went to the Islanders for a second-round pick and a prospect. Like, Andy Green's a sixth defenseman. He's 37 years old. Like, there's value, it seems, this year for these role players who can do a little bit more. Derek Grant, if he goes out, and not saying I want to trade him, but if you can go out and you can get a second-round pick for him and a prospect, like, you got to do that. You can bring him back next year. You can bring him back in free agency. I think he's a UFA, right? So bring him back in free agency if you really want him back, and get some value for him.
If he's willing to come back, that's the other thing. I don't know.
You telling me Derek Grant's not willing to come back? He can see the numbers. He knows.
Yeah, I mean, he feels comfortable in our system and obviously with the guys, but I know it just feels like if every time I sign something, management goes, all right, well, this guy's expendable, and we don't have a whole lot of faith in necessarily keeping him. He's always an asset to get rid of. I mean, that could kind of like, okay, this team really doesn't want to keep me unless, they're winning, and if not, what have you done for me lately type deal kind of comes in. Yeah. So, I don't know, different things for different people.
Let's get to this next goal by Adam Henrique, because I love the setup by Troy Terry. It's something we haven't seen a ton on the Ducks power play, these cross-ice passes, and Terry just sets it up perfectly for Adam Henrique. The amount of time that he had to put this puck in the back net, he could have taken another 5 seconds, and he probably still would have scored, because all Demko had in the entire net was just his stick, half of his stick, and that was it. So great pass by Troy Terry. Nice to see him doing well too. He's got 5 points as in the 11 games since returning from the AHL, which isn't great, but it's definitely better than what he was doing earlier in the beginning part of the season here. And nice to see him convert on the power play with the Ducks' most deadly weapon on their power play. Adam Henrique has 6 power play goals this year, so if you're going to try and get a guy like Troy Terry going on the power play, why not put him with a guy who's clearly been putting the puck in the back of the net all season on the power play for the Ducks?
Yeah, and that pass was great, and it really kind of fooled Demko because Terry kind of initially looked like he may shoot it. He had it at a shooting spot, and then how close he passed it through. I didn't remember who was in front, but there was a Ducks player in front of the net, and Demko stops right at him thinking it's going to get deflected because it was that close to the guy's skate, and then just went all the way to Henrique, and then Demko's like down and out, and that's the desperation with the stick and trying to get it. But Terry's done better. He's definitely shooting more. He seems a little bit more focused in his attack when he's trying to either shoot or make a pass. It's more direct versus, all right, I'm looking around and I'm going to lose it, or I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go with it. So it is good to see him kind of make that step a little bit up, and then hopefully those goals and assists all start kind of falling in place.
Yeah, and just like him, obviously it's Steele and Gooley who get the final 2 goals of this game. Those are also 2 guys who need to get things going. Steele, offensively needs to get things going, and not necessarily offense needs to get going for Brendan Gooley, but he needs to find some consistency. This is a guy we expected to be up in the NHL all year, and he found himself in San Diego for a significant stint there, and it is arguably he could only be up because Eric Goodbranson's on the IR right now. So he's got to prove himself right now if he wants to stick around. He's got to show that he deserves to play over Jakob Larsson, over Michael Del Zotto, and I like his game since returning. He played in the Sabres game, was scratched for the game against St. Louis, and I believe he played in Calgary, and then obviously tonight getting the goal. So nice to see him get on the board too. One thing I want to go to here before we look at some of the best performers over the last 11 games is just to look at the lines. The Ducks have seemed to find some consistency here, and barring injury, we've seen some guys put together for long stints here. So Ritchie, Henrique, and Terry have seemed to become a pretty good third/second line for the Ducks. Like it's something that we really haven't seen split up at all. There's guys who've been in and out of the lineup. Obviously, Cash has been hurt here and there, and a couple guys have been, Sherwood's been up, and a few other guys have come up and gone back down. But that line seems to have stuck together so far. I mean, what do you think of that line so far, and how they've been playing?
I mean, they're doing good, and obviously, it's the highlight of it is how Henrique's doing. It's doing better because Terry's in there, and I've been happy with what Richie's done kind of all season. He's done it on different lines, but you kind of know what you're getting from him. So what I like about it is that line is to a player is fairly consistent. Like we talked about with Henrique being a consistent player. Richie, although you'd always wish there's a little bit more offense and a little bit less of the penalties or stupid penalties, he is consistent. And then if Terry kind of just continues on with what he's doing, he can be consistent too. And like I said, it's good. It's a starting point, and as they kind of maybe develop even more of that chemistry, you might see things get a lot easier, and then maybe some of those goals start going in for Terry, and even a little bit more for Richie, and then we got a really good second/third line.
Yeah, it would be nice for Terry to find a home. I mean, those 2 guys, Richie and Henrique, we've seen together for a while, and at stints last year and the year before that too. But it was Andre Kasha who was the guy who found a home with those 2. But now it seems Troy Terry has found a spot there, and it was Jones, Steele, and Kasha up until the Toronto game where Andre Kasha got hurt, that they were kind of forming some chemistry there. So you had 3 lines rolling. You had Getzlaf, Raquel, and Silfverberg. You had Jones, Steele, and Kasha, and then you had Richie, Henrique, and Terry. And, if you had to roll in every night with that top 9, I'd be pretty happy with that. And if it meant that there was development for Jones and Steele, playing well with arguably the Ducks' best player this year, Jakob Silfverberg, and it meant Troy Terry was going to get some time and playing with Adam Henrique, who's been one of the Ducks' best goal scorers this year. And if Troy Terry's going to kind of build on what's got him to this point so far, and that's his playmaking ability, you'd want to put him with a guy like Adam Henrique, who has over 20 goals this year. So hopefully we see this kind of continue. I'd like to see Andre Kasha come back, and we get to see Jones, Steele, and Kasha get put back together, and that means a promotion to the top line for Getzlaf and Raquel. Unfortunately, that probably means Devon Shore finds his way back into the press box for most of these games, but you really can't break up that 4th line either with Grant Rowney and Deslauriers.
Yeah, no, they're when we talk about line consistency, I mean, there's nothing that's been more consistent than that line. I don't really recall a time it's been broken up. Even bad times, good times, that line just rolls. And then those guys, get the power play, or sorry, not the power play, the penalty kill opportunities. And we're one of the top teams in shorthanded goals for. So the power play's not scoring. Hey, if we can get the penalty kill guys putting the puck in the net, let's do it. But that fourth line, I think, is built right. Rowney and Grant have some speed, have some talent, especially Grant at finishing on plays. But they all go hard. And Deslauriers, I even like as the guy that's in there that will be your fighter when you need him. We still have some guys that end up getting liberties taken, and this guy usually wins the fights he's in. And that's fine, but you've also got to be able to not draw your line mates down because you're slow, you don't know how to play, or all you're doing is looking for fights, and you're taking penalties. Penalties. He goes in with the hits. He goes hard on his shift, and every now and again he even chips in with a goal. He's got a good slap shot as well, and when needed, he'll fight. So I think that whole line is just kind of really set up very well for us.
He's got value. I mean, it's clear, and we'll get to it a bit later, but the Ducks signing Nic Deslauriers to a 2-year extension kind of made sense because we ripped on it when it happened in the offseason because not so much that it was a bad signing, it just made no sense. Like, it just didn't make sense for the Ducks to bring. I think you liked it more than me and Pat did. But
we can get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into that after. I want to kind of talk about the guys who've been leading the way for the Ducks, and no surprise, it's Adam Henrique, who has 8 points in the last 11 games, which leads all Ducks players. He's just kind of been on fire. That includes tonight as well. This is a guy who, like you said, is the definition of consistency this year for the Ducks. Needed to take a step forward after a bit of a disappointing year last year, even though he's still kind of finished in the realm of what we expect from him. And Rickard Rakell with 6 points in his last 11 games. Ondrej Kase has 5 in his last 7 before getting hurt in the game against Toronto, which is for me is super disappointing because it felt like he was getting on a roll. And to not have been able to see him play in these last 4 games, especially get back on a line with Steele and Jones where things were kind of working out for him. Well, I guess, 3 and a bit.
You're not counting
because he was technically scratched for that game. But, it would have been nice to see him kind of involved in these last 3 and a bit games just to see if he could keep that play up. Because he was arguably the Ducks' second best player behind Adam Henrique before the injury or illness he's currently suffering. I saw somebody in the chat earlier say the flu cushion is what Ondrej Kase has right now. So potentially that. But then there's Troy Terry kind of not bringing up the rear, but being impressive since his return. And as I mentioned earlier, he has 5 points in his last 11 games. So some surprising names in Troy Terry to see up there, and some guys you kind of expect to be up there in Adam Henrique and Rickard Rakell.
Yeah. Yeah, to touch on the whole Kasha thing, that's really weird that they would say, oh, it's the flu, and I'm just wondering if this is, hey, we don't want people to know he's got another concussion, which is what I was saying in the offseason, is just this dude's just, this was no fault of his own. I can't believe there wasn't a penalty call, there wasn't some sort of review on it. I mean, it was blatant hit to the head, elbow coming through, so I don't understand how that all got missed. Then to just say, oh yeah, no, he came down with the flu of it. Yeah. It's like, you're just saying that. So
I can't say it's not true because everybody seems to have the flu right now, and there are a few teams.
You were sick for 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, so. I mean, I'm at the forefront of it, but there have been a few teams in the NHL have been ravaged by the flu lately, and as you know, I mean, the Ducks had the mumps couple years ago where in any locker room, if one guy gets sick, the likelihood of the rest of them getting sick is exponentially higher. So it could just be that Ondrej Kase has been just quarantined somewhere, and they're just waiting this out so nobody else gets sick, because we haven't seen anybody else get sick. I know the only other player who's out right now is Eric Branson, and he's on the IR. So it's.
Did they say what he was out with? I feel like it's like a separated shoulder or some sort of ligament in his shoulder. Because
let's double check. I can't exactly remember what they said, but
because he made a collision that he wasn't ready for, but it looked like it hit him in the shoulder. He got out and kept skating, but then he went to the bench, and after that, so it's kind of like something that's there. Then he had his arm in a sling after.
Yeah, I was going to say the last report I saw was that he went back home to be reevaluated, upper body injury, left the game against Toronto, and it was reported that he exited wearing a sling. So some shoulder or elbow or some type of injury. I would think shoulder too. So.
Shoulder, because that's what he hit. Yeah, just wondering, like a knee, like you have a knee ligament. Sometimes you have to go in, get an MRI, take a look at it, and depending on how bad that tear is, they go, no, just you have to rest. You sprained it really, really bad, or they go, yeah, it's kind of a tear. You need to have surgery. So.
Well, one guy who's taken advantage, I guess, of Goodbranson being out of the lineup has been Michael Delzato. And over the last 11 games, he's been impressive. I mean, he's been playing a lot of that time with Cam Fowler, and he's put up 3 points in those last 11 games, which isn't outstanding, but Michael Delzato really isn't the type of guy, at least at this point in his career, who puts up points for fun. But his puck possession stats are pretty good. He's just hovering around 50%. His expected goals for is among tops in not just Ducks defensemen and Ducks players at 56%. So he's doing things well. I mean, he hasn't made too many mistakes. He seems to have kind of replaced Erik Goodbranson as a reliable top 4 defenseman for the Ducks while he's out. Not maybe ideal to have 2 lefties or 3 lefties in the top 4, but he's getting it done. And whether that's upping his trade value for another team, another Stanley Cup team to come out and get him and then not play him in the playoffs, then maybe that's the case. But he's at least playing well, and he'll be a serviceable option for the Ducks for the rest of the year, or he'll up his trade value and the Ducks can get something more than what they got for him last year.
I'm happy with trading him. I don't know. Every time I seem to watch him, or whenever I notice him, it's usually a mistake. Like it's a turnover, or like he takes an odd angle to the puck in his own defensive zone. So I don't know. It just feels like every time I see him, I'm like, man, he's just, I don't know. I don't know if that's just me, but that's my eye test looking at it. I mean, obviously he's got good underlying numbers, but the eye test I see, I'm just like, all right, we literally have anybody else in there making these same mistakes. So it's, I don't see much of an up value. He's gonna fill a roster spot until Goodbranson comes back, because Goodbranson and Fowler were playing amazing for the most part, leading up until that injury. So
they have to go back.
He's better than Holzer, so I'll give him that.
Yeah, but and then one thing I got corrected on in the chat too is it's actually 3 points in the last 10 games for Delzato, because he got scratched tonight for Corbinian Holzer. Whether that's a birthday gift from Dallas Aikens, belated birthday gift to Corbinian Holzer to get into the game tonight, or it's a reaction to the 6-0 loss to the Calgary Flames. Not really on Michael Delzato personally. It's not his fault that they lost 6-0, but something has to change, and you're on a bottom pairing. Yeah, you're bottom pairing guy, and you're gonna get changed out every now and then. So not super surprising there. But on the topic of trade talk, and that's gonna be huge, I think, in the next couple podcasts we do, because the trade deadline's coming up in what, less than a week or just over a week now. I think it's Feb 24. I think is the trade deadline. I'm probably wrong on that.
Is that a Tuesday? No. Is that usually Tuesday?
I think so. I think it's Feb 24.
Then it's the 22nd.
So tomorrow it'll be a week away. So a couple moves have already happened. We mentioned Blake Coleman earlier today. And who else got moved earlier today? There was somebody else, and I already mentioned it, and I can't remember who it was.
Andy Green, right?
Yeah, Andy Green got moved to the Islanders, but the big one. And this is a big one for me, because I didn't call this. I just said Silfverberg would be a big fit, or a good fit, for the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are notorious for trading away not only first-round picks, but some of their top prospects to stay competitive. They're a good team this year. They're suffering from injuries. They need goal scoring. They're going to go out and get somebody. They're rumored to be in on guys like Rickard Rakell or Jeff Carter, or pretty much anybody who could score goals that was available. Chris Kreider was another guy they were looking at. They end up getting Jason Zucker, and what they had to pay to get him was unbelievable. And to think that the reasons they apparently went out to get Jason Zucker, he's a good goal scorer, plays decent in his own end, is under contract for the next 3 years at 5.5, which isn't too bad. I think Minnesota ate some salary, or maybe they did. Oh, no, they didn't, but they took on Alex Galchenyuk's salary, which kind of evened out. It felt like it was in a mold in the shape of Jack Silver that could just fit in there. And this is exactly what the Ducks needed. Another first-round pick, potentially late, who cares, in a stacked draft. A right-shot defense prospect who's among the top in the position of prospects on defense, who had a great World Junior Championship for Canada. The Ducks have no right shot depth at all. And then you bring in a guy like Alex Galchenyuk who can just at least play, and he doesn't exactly replace what you have in Jakob Silfverberg, but he can play. Like, you can put him into your top 9, and he'll fit in, and he'll at least be better than what the Ducks currently have to put into that spot. And you're eating salary, which is what apparently Bob Murray said he wanted to do and he was prepared to do, was to bring in not bad contracts, but guys that make a decent amount of money that teams want to get rid of to get good assets in return. And I'm not saying that maybe he wasn't involved, or that it could be very well that Pittsburgh said no, we'd rather have Jason Zucker. We don't really know. It just feels like a deal the Ducks easily could have been in on. And Silfverberg could easily replace Jason Zucker and arguably be a better player and a better option for Pittsburgh. And it's hard not to feel like the Ducks missed out on this.
Well, what is Zucker's past few seasons? Because I feel that that's something that Pittsburgh was maybe really going after, the fact that he's consistently been able to score. He's still young, and he's got a nice contract for a little while. Where Silfverberg, although we see it and we can kind of see that he's had that scoring ability and he's done very well this year. He's very hard to break through to 20 goals season in, season out prior. So he's always looked at as a good defensive two-way guy. But if Pittsburgh was like, well, we need goal scoring, this Zucker guy is consistent, or Silfverberg's having a good season this season on a bad team. So they may have just gone like, well, let's go with what we know. We've seen what Zucker has been doing, and we haven't seen this consistently enough for years to come, because it's not a rental. They're not just doing it for this. It's a good contract for them for a few more years, and they maybe just weren't sold on Silfverberg being at that same level.
It's fairly similar. I mean, Zucker had the one big season in 2017-18 where he had 33 goals and 64 points. Other than that, he had 21 goals the season after that, had 22 the season before it, had 21 back in 14 and 15, and then last year in only 45 games, he had 14 goals and 29 points. About on par, maybe a little bit better than what Silfverberg's been doing. Silfverberg had a 24-goal season last year, 17 before that, 23, 20, and then well under 20 for his first 3 seasons in the league. But this year, he's an all-star, 17 goals in 53 games, will definitely hit 20 this year, converge on 40 points. Like, the production is fairly similar. Both are former second-round picks. Silfverberg's 29, Zucker's 28. I believe Silfverberg makes less money than Zucker does. So, like, there's not a huge difference. And it could just be that the Penguins like Jason Zucker more. Like, I can't dispute that. They're fairly similar. And maybe they wanted a left wing left shot instead of a right wing right shot. It could be that simple. Or maybe they liked, they wanted an American player. Who knows? Yeah. There's a million different reasons that could go into it.
I heard also that Zucker is deceptively fast, and Pittsburgh likes to have that kind of quickness. That's why they got the Hagelins, and they like that style of play a little bit. They like the quickness of it, and although Silfverberg isn't slow by any stretch, he doesn't come across as fast. But a lot of people have actually said that Jason Zucker is deceptively fast. You don't really realize it until you're playing against him, that he's a lot faster than that. Because I've never noticed it, but that's just what I had heard.
And what goes into it too is Minnesota and Jason Zucker over the last year and a half haven't had a great relationship. The GM, I believe it was Fenton before. I don't even know who's their GM now.
It's Guerin now.
It's Bill Guerin. Yeah, there was some bad blood between Fenton and Zucker.
They tried to trade him.
And they tried to trade him at some point.
Calgary or something.
And things went south. So maybe it was Zucker kind of pushing that, and maybe this all went down, and Bob Murray had no idea it was going down. Who knows? Mm-hmm. It just felt like a deal that the Ducks could have got done, and it would have helped them exponentially to get another first-round pick and a right-shot defenseman in the system. But it didn't happen, and unfortunately, it's not like it's over. The Ducks have plenty of time if they want to make some moves here, and there have been some analysts out there who have kind of predicted some moves the Ducks could make. Andre Kasha, before the injury, Pierre LeBrun had said that he put out a list of 6 trades that make a lot of sense. preface this that there's no merit behind these. There's no rumors that this team is working on a deal with this team.
It's just an opinion piece.
Yeah, it was an opinion piece. He just thought it makes sense. So he had put Ondrej Kase to the Boston Bruins in exchange for Oskar Steen in a 2023. And the reasoning he said for this is because the Ducks were trying to trade Ondrej Kase at the beginning of the year to the Blues, or not to the Blues, to the Hurricanes for Justin Falk, and that the Bruins are looking for some cheap options to get some added goal scoring to their top 9. So it makes sense along those lines. I can't see why the Ducks would do this. And even if you don't know a lot about Oskar Steen, he's kind of a mid-level prospect, hasn't done anything spectacular. He's a guy who could maybe jump into your bottom 6 at some point in the NHL, and then the Ducks get a third-round pick. I can't see the benefit or the motivation for the Ducks to do a deal like this for Ondrej Kase unless you just aren't sure about his health, or you just don't think he's ever going to be a consistent 20-goal scorer. Like, honestly, I would rather take the bet that Ondrej Kase could fulfill the potential that we think he has than to go out and get a prospect who's not that different than what the Ducks already have in their system and a third-round pick.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like if you're... The only way that would kind of make sense is if it was like at the draft and not necessarily at the trade deadline, because then it's like, okay, well, what's that third looking like? Like, is there a guy that we think, might get snatched up and we might miss out on him, so we could use that third or something like that. But yeah, I mean, to get a guy who's probably not as dynamic, you get a third and hope that turns into something down the road. I mean, it's just not getting enough for what we know we have. Going back the other way, although Kase hasn't been all that stellar on the actual board, he's still got the talent there, and it's just, if he can stay healthy is his biggest thing. But you know where I stand on his health. Yeah. I don't think he's long for
the
this
fact that we don't know if it's the flu or a concussion right now kind of says it all of how we feel about Ondrej Kase's health at this point. I still don't think it means that the Ducks just take anything for him and move on. I think there's still a potential he comes back. Elliot Friedman, in his latest 31 Thoughts, kind of shed some light on what the Ducks could do at the deadline. This is a quote from that piece. He said, "I don't think Anaheim is particularly interested in moving their key pieces from Josh Manson to Cam Fowler to Hampus Lindholm to Jakob Silfverberg to Rickard Rakell. You're really going to have to move the needle. Ondrej Kase is a possibility, and there are teams who like him, although he has missed 2 straight games. Now it's 4 straight games after being hit by Jake Muzzin. I can see contenders eyeing Derek Grant. He's had a strong year and doesn't come at an enormous cost." And then in that, there was also a quote from an NHL executive on the Ducks trading Josh Manson. He said, "It's wishful thinking. If someone gives Bob Murray a crazy offer, he might do it, but I don't think he will." So it seems like, not to contradict what Bob Murray said, where he's kind of fed up and he wants to do something big, it seems like he's not really particularly interested in moving anybody unless he gets somebody to overpay, which I don't think anybody really will do, especially with the prices in the market right now. Like, if Blake Coleman's getting a former first-round pick and a first-round pick in a deal for a guy who's got 20 goals, who's not consistently a 20-goal scorer and only has about 30 points, like, Rickard Rakell's, the price on him right now has to be extremely high. And same for Jakob Silfverberg, and same for a guy like Josh Manson as a right-shot defenseman. Like, you would have to think, if that's the price you're basing things off, and especially like what Andy Green got, like, imagine what Josh Manson is going to get you right now at the deadline, and Silfverberg and Rakell or Fowler, like any of these guys. There just might not be teams who are willing to pay that, and Bob Murray might know that and be trying to get even more out of some of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's the cat and mouse game. It's kind of watching the first domino fall and then seeing who's going to react. And some guys may overpay. Other people go, you know what, I like where we're at, and I don't think we need to add any pieces, and definitely not at the cost of the future. Usually it's the bigger teams that are in win now mode that might overpay because they feel they can get that little bit of an edge that kind of helps them moving forward. But Josh Manson is it's hard for me to see them moving it. One, because Bob Murray doesn't like to get rid of defensemen in the first place, especially ones that he feels are top 4 defensemen. Also, a right-handed shot. If he's gone, that's Holzer that's left. There's not
on the IR, so
Branson's on the IR, and bringing up Gudbranson, into a smaller extent, Holzer. Josh Manson is a physical presence in front of the net. Now, I have not enjoyed Josh Manson the last 2 seasons. I still am not a big fan of what he's done this season. But you take him away, you take Brunson out of it, there's almost no one who's really physical after that. And then that means that, yeah, eventually, hopefully, you have to get a guy that's going to be that way because you're going to need somebody in front that's going to be able to kind of push guys around and make life difficult. Otherwise, every line's going to have a fun time just running right through the crease, and they don't have much to worry about unless a forward's coming over to pound them. So I don't feel like the Ducks have anything to replace Manson with, so it'd be really hard for them to want to get rid of him unless they were getting a huge overpayment.
Yeah, it's almost like they would have to get a huge overpayment and then also be getting another right shot defenseman in return, and whether that's just kind of them eating kind of the salary on a bad contract or something to get another one of those guys in return. I feel like that's what they would have to do. I mean, the big rumor for a while was the Toronto Maple Leafs were interested in Josh Manson, and they have guys like Kasperi Kapanen and Andreas Janssen who they'd be willing to move. Obviously Janssen now is hurt for the next 8 weeks, so he's no longer a trade piece. But even Kasperi Kapanen was a guy that I just wasn't too interested in. Like, he's pretty much what the Ducks already have in players like Troy Terry and Max Jones, and maybe he's a little bit more refined than those guys, but I see his potential pretty much just as the same as that. And the other thing is to kind of offset the loss of Josh Manson, the Ducks could eat the contract of Cody Ceci, which would help the Leafs bring back Josh Manson, and then have their pick of one of their top prospects, whether it be Jeremy Bracco or Timothy Liljegren or another guy that Nick Robinson, some of the top prospects that the Leafs have in their system. But it just that deal has kind of been squashed now, and it just never felt like something that made sense for the Ducks to go out and do, and to give up Josh Manson for a type of forward they already have. A right shot defense prospect, yeah, maybe, and then eating a contract on a player who's pretty much just the same, another Eric Goodbranson in Cody Ceci.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, like, even if Toronto want him because, he's definitely more defensive. Yeah, he's a right-handed shot, but it's like they have so many flaws on their defensive side, quite honestly. I mean, I would feel that if they thought Manson was going to help fill that void or whatever's going on, he was not doing that here. He's not going to all of a sudden go over there and all of a sudden be your defensive savior and lock things down. You guys are still going to probably have the exact same problems. So
the Leafs almost play a more defensively exposed game than the Ducks do. I mean, the Leafs just can outscore their problems. And look at how much Freddie's numbers have taken a hit this year. Like, the Leafs just do not play defense. And
wears out a goalie, and that's why Freddie keeps getting injured.
To think that Josh Manson could go there and, one, make this team infinitely better, and all of a sudden, have a better year than he's having here. Like, I don't think it's going to change. He's going to be exposed just as much as he's being exposed here for a not so great, defense in front of him. And like I said, I'd argue the Leafs play poorly. More poorly than the Ducks do when it comes to team defense. Like, they just aren't a structured team. They have a lot of guys who don't care to get back. When you have a lot of young guys like Matthews and Marner and Nylander who feel like they can outscore their problems, you've got some issues there. And not to say that Josh Manson couldn't go and do well there. I just don't think it's a deal that makes a lot of sense for the Ducks to go out and try and pursue. Brett brings up a great quote from the article I was just about to reference here. The Athletic had like an NHL agents poll where they asked a question, kind of which GM do you find most unreasonable to deal with, and of course Bob Murray won. He was
about like one.
He led with 4 votes. Doug Armstrong of the Blues was second with 3 votes, and that could be recency bias with the Blues making a hard push on a lot of guys near the deadline last year to make their rush. But one of the agents said, "Your wife doesn't love you as much as Bob Murray loves Josh Manson." I feel like that is 100% true. Josh Manson, again, like we said, Nic Deslauriers is a Bob Murray type player. Josh Manson is a Bob Murray type player. to a T. Like, he plays
Grit and
physical, he's a
sandpaper.
big guy. Yeah, grit and sandpaper. A reliable guy, a captain-like material to some extent. Like, this is Josh Manson is a Bob Murray type player, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for the Ducks, it just he does not seem like the type of guy he will ever move unless you're basically paying double of what this guy's worth. Like, it just doesn't seem like it's gonna happen.
Yeah, and that's probably the right approach. So I mean, I don't mind it. And as far as the NHL agent polls, I kind of find it hilarious. It's like, well, yeah, of course they're not going to like a guy who's trying really hard to sign guys at a bargain.
Yeah.
And and he'll pull all the stops he can because hey, we've always been a budget team. We're trying to stay under the cap. That sort of is trying not to make the same mistakes he has in the past. So I view it more as a compliment where everyone else is looking as like, oh, he's just so difficult to deal with. It's like, yeah, he's trying to get like the friendliest contract for the team so that there's room to maybe make more moves if the team is at that point. Team's not at that point this year or last year, so no moves ever came from it, but it gives him that flexibility. And I think he's done a good job on a lot of those signings. Your Gibsons, your Rakels, your Silverbergs, those are good signings that really kind of help us out. So I would take it more as a feather in the cap. He's a tough son of a bitch to negotiate with, but he gets the players that he feels he can get, and then every now and again he signs Dan Heatley.
Yeah, it depends on whose agents they're interviewing here. Because if this is Rickard Rakell's agent, and John Gibson's agent, and Nick Ritchie's agent, when you look at the team friendly deals those guys are on, I could feel like they'd be a bit bitter with Bob Murray for where those players, especially Rickard Rakell making less than $3.5 million right now for the next couple of years. That guy is worth more, and Bob Murray just locked him down at the right time, and then obviously Rakell has those back-to-back 30-goal seasons after that, and I don't think he's bitter personally or upset, but I
don't think it's the players. The players I don't think are bitter about it because they're the ones that say, yeah, let's do it, whatever. It's the agents that go like, that guy's really tough.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, it's just like it's one of those
GM.
those perfect timing signings with Rickard Rakell where you kind of know this guy is gonna break out at some point, and it just so happens he does have his breakout year and has 30 goals. The year after you sign him to a what is now a team friendly deal. At the time, I don't think we argued that was a team friendly or even had the notion that it was a team friendly deal or
it seemed about appropriate.
Yeah, it seemed about appropriate for his production, and then breaks out and has two back-to-back 30-goal seasons, and it looks like a steal because it was. But it at the time, I don't think I'd have to go back, but I don't think any of us thought it was an outright steal of a contract at the time. You could maybe project forward and say, like, if he fulfills his potential, then it can be a good contract down the road because of the length of it. But it turns out now that it's one of the better contracts in the league, despite Rickard Rakell not getting back to that same form. To wrap up some of this trade deadline talk, because like I said, we're nearing in now on the trade deadline. Do you think Bob Murray does anything? Do you think anybody gets moved? Whether it be a big deal, small deal, anything like that.
I don't think he's actively shopping, so I don't feel like he's putting himself out there. He'll listen to calls, and so it just depends where the interest is around the league for what they have. It's unusual for him to even come out and say, this is our strategy. We'll take on bad contracts if you can part with a prospect and maybe some draft picks. Usually he's not a guy who kind of tells you what he wants or tips his hand that publicly. So that's already kind of an interesting take on how this trade deadline goes. But the Ducks are notoriously quiet when it comes to trade deadline or around that time. Usually they make their moves a little bit earlier, months usually before we get to that trade deadline, just because Bob Murray just doesn't like that last bit. But we've also been that team that's looking to add at the trade. The team that's looking to deal or offload people. So kind of new territory, new uncharted water. So it's kind of hard to predict, but. If it goes the way it always has, I assume it'll be another quiet one, maybe something real minor, but yeah, I don't want to guess at this point.
We've got to be close to a year on the Montour trade now, right? Like when?
Yeah, it's a little past a year. I think he did that. He did that like November or January. of last year.
Brendan Montour was traded on February 24th.
Like I said, about a year.
About a year, so we're getting close. He's almost there, and maybe we're leading up to that, another big deal by Bob Murray. Like it feels like it's possible, and we didn't think Brendan Montour was going to get moved last year, but we thought something of that level was going to happen. I definitely did not think it was going to be Brandon Montour, but that's the guy who ends up getting moved. I feel like it's still possible that something like that happens. Whether and it might be a guy we don't expect again. Maybe it's a Rickard Rakell, which I wouldn't advocate, but you never know with Bob Murray. Like he always has something up his sleeve, and I think if he can get a good deal for a player like Rickard Rakell, I think the interest would be extremely high. You look at a lot of these teams that are trying to compete, that are right up against the cap. I would feel like if Bob Murray has made Rickard Rakell available, you would have to assume he's at the top of many of those lists just because of the salary and the term and the fact that Rickard Rakell has been a two-time 30-goal scorer, and you put him with the right player, and there'll be a lot of teams who say, maybe this guy just needs a change of scenery, and if he plays with my guys, then he'll get back to being that player. Like he seems like the ultimate low risk, high reward type move. Like you're not paying too much for him in terms of salary, and but the price on him would have to be extremely high. Like you would think like at least a first round pick, a high end prospect plus, because Blake Coleman just got a first round pick in a high end prospect, right? So Rickard Rakell would have to get more than that.
Yeah, I would assume so, and especially if the Ducks, they'll definitely know that value that they're parting with, given the contract, and he's already shown the potential, and he still has even more potential because he was still doing those 30-goal seasons under a bad system, and now it's not exactly clicking on all cylinders this year. But it's a little maybe a work in progress. It's a different coaching style, and it just needs another season to ferment. But the Ducks would have to go like, all right, Rakell has been in our long-term plans. So if we're getting rid of someone that's in our long-term plans, we better have substantial stuff that comes behind it that kind of accelerates what we're trying to do overall, because we're trading a very big asset for our plans as a franchise. So it'd have to be significant.
I would think so, especially with the prices we've seen so far. Dave said, how about David Backes, a first round in this year and a first round in next year from the Bruins for Rakell? I would say I'd have to say no, because taking on David Backes at this point means the Bruins have to give up more for you taking on that term and that salary, and you think
for two firsts.
Yeah, 2 firsts, essentially for Rickard Rakell and cap freedom. They would have to give up more, because again, I keep referring to this because it's really the only big trade we've had so far in the Blake Coleman deal. Like, Nolan Foote is essentially a first-round pick, and then they get another first-round pick. If that's what the cost is for a decent player who's performing pretty well,
you have a proven guy.
Yeah, then you have a proven guy at a great contract, and then you're taking on a David Backes salary. You would have to think that you would have to add another high-end prospect at least to that deal. And then maybe I don't think if you've already got 2 picks in there, you can add another pick. But like a high-end prospect and a third added on to that to get value there. If you take out David Backes, then maybe it's just a first, a high prospect, and a third or a second, and maybe that gets it done. But yeah, it's.
I wonder if Dave's thinking that we would do it and get Backes and then have Backes play.
Well, I mean, I think the Ducks would have Backes play. I think anywhere he goes, I think he'd want to play. I mean, he reported to Providence, but didn't. Or sorry, he got assigned to Providence, but the Bruins told him not to go.
Yeah, they both
said
that.
They don't want him playing down there.
Yeah, because they probably don't want him to get injured.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want him to play down there so he gets injured and so they can still trade him. And he doesn't want to play down there because it's the AHL. And I think he's still a good hockey player. He's just not worth like the $6 million that he's getting paid. And that's the tail end of the really bad contract term and value that guys were getting when David Backes signed his contract. It was like 7 years at $6 million. It just wasn't. There was no way it was going to be
good
worth
at the
it
time, but not at the end of the career, and especially with his injuries and stuff.
That's what you're seeing with a lot of guys now. Is those last 2 or 3 years of the contract are just detriments to a lot of the teams that they're on. So, I think the Ducks do something. Whether it's a big move or a small move, I don't know. It could be a Derek Grant, Michael Del Zotto type move. It could be an Andre Kasher, Rickard Raquel, Josh Manson type move. I think something gets done. I think Bob Murray has to do something. You have to sell something, the position you're in. You can't just ride out the end of the season. And whether it's just the UFAs that you trade, or the RFAs, like if you try and trade a Devon Shore just to get some assets back because he hasn't been playing much, just do something. You got to do something to get some assets.
Yeah, get something for Sprong or something.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think what Bob Murray's selling it on, and by selling it, it's selling it to the fans, but also to ownership, is that, hey, this is our retooling. We got a brand new coach in there, a lot of young players. We hope they do a little bit better, but it takes him a little while. And so he's going to try negotiate that as to, hey, we're not going to just knee-jerk reaction because, hey, we didn't just blow up, everyone out of the water and overreach expectations. I think he had an idea that this season could potentially get them to the playoffs, but it could also be right where we're at. And for him, he was saying, listen, this is where it's at right now. This is where we are as a franchise. We're not going to do anything drastic and put us even further behind, trying to hopefully get younger players to try and jump into this whole new system, and hopefully it all kind of works. He knows kind of what he's got. And so I kind of feel opposite of what you do. I don't think he does anything. I think he just does his normal mode of operation unless something comes out that's substantial for him. So I was just like, here it is. I need what you got. Here, whatever your price is, I'll drop it for you.
At the bare minimum, he has to move out the UFAs and RFAs to contending teams like he did last year. Like, move the Del Zotto out, move Daniel Sprong out, move Devon Shore out. Move these guys out who you're going to lose nothing. You lose for nothing at the end of the year, and you might as well get assets for them. You're not a good team. You're not going to make the playoffs. Like, at the very least, move those guys out and get something for them, especially Derek Grant, who's playing well, especially Michael Del Zotto, who's probably playing above what you expected from him. Like, those are guys you can get assets for.
I think Derek Grant gets extended.
He could. He very well could. I mean, they did it with Nic Deslauriers, which we can move into right now. The Ducks signed Nic Deslauriers to a 2-year extension for $1 million. I don't think he had any trade value like Derek Grant has trade value with 14 goals. But it's a signing that made sense. And I'm not going to dispute that. I think he's playing better than we expected. I ripped on the signing a bit for good reason. I still don't think it made sense, but it gave the Ducks something they were missing, and a guy who could fight. I think Nic Deslauriers is close to leading the league in fights this year. That's his role. There's no question about it. He is the fighter on this team. I just felt like, I want to preface it with this. I think every team needs a guy like this. You look at Edmonton with Zach Kassian. I think every team needs a guy like this, like a guy who can play on the edge, who can defend your team, who can fight, who can get the guys going.
Ryan Reeves on Vegas.
Yeah, but I just think the Ducks had other guys who could do that. Like, I think Max Jones, if he committed to it, he could do that, and he's a lot better player than Nic Deslauriers. I think Nick Ritchie could be that guy, but he spends too much time in the penalty box, as is for minor penalties. I just felt like the Ducks had that guy, and this feels like a typical Bob Murray signing where he loves to sign these guys. And again, I'm not saying Nic Deslauriers hasn't been good and hasn't played better than I expected of him. But it's just, you're looking at some of the young guys who come into the lineup next year. With Trevor Zegras, we would hope would be up here. A few of the guys playing in San Diego as well. Like, it just feels like an unnecessary roster spot to give up for the next 2 years. And it doesn't mean they have to play Nic Deslauriers. I'm just not super happy about it. I don't hate it. I'm just not super happy about it.
I love it. Maybe I won't say love. I like it. It's fine. You are going to have those plays. You're not going to have 4 lines. And I would hope when Zegras is up with the club, we're not playing him 4th line, and we're not making him play 4th line minutes. I think same thing with your Nick Ritchies and your Max Jones. I think they want them to do more offensive because they are more offensively gifted. To put them on the 4th line and diminish their ability or their time to maybe make plays happen, and then force them into maybe more of a, hey, not only got to hit, I've got to try and stand up and fight, I got to do that. It's like, don't do that. Just have someone like Deslauriers, who rarely loses fights, will always fight and kind of follows that code a little bit. but he's not a detriment to that line. I mean, if he can
Yeah.
go and he's running and Grant's having a great season, I mean, if he was pulling down Derek Grant or Rowney or anything like that with his play or being slow or not, hustling or anything like that, but he's checking off all the little things. And for $1 million for 2 more years, being on the most consistent line, I like that. You're getting honestly, I thought same thing. He's just going to fight, and hopefully he's not too bad. But he's actually made that line better, in my opinion. I think they all work well together, and they all have that energy, and they kind of feed off each other. So it's not like he's fumbling passes or he can't get it to guys open. He knows to get it to the other guys. They're going to have more offensive gift, but he's going to go in there and he's going to hit some bodies. He's going to make some noise, and he'll answer, make other people answer if they start taking liberties. So I absolutely like where he is and what he does for our team. And it's, it's not long term or anything.
Operation brings up in our chat too. Like, it's only $1 million a year. If you really need to, it's a healthy scratch contract. Like, it's not like, if you're going to press box him $1 million, it's not going to hurt you too much. And he could become one of those guys who is purely situational, right? Like, depending on the team you're facing. You're going against a heavier team, you play Nic Deslauriers. Like, the Ducks have done that in the past.
You got to go play against the Kings. You want to have Nic Deslauriers.
Exactly. Like he, and I'd be fine to have him as that guy. I mean, maybe I don't want him in there every night, but I do like him as an option to have. I think he is a valuable player to have in certain occasions where you need a guy like that. Like, if there's going to be a fight tonight, you want Nic Deslauriers in the lineup because he'll probably win it, or he'll at least go out there and make a show of it, right? Like, you're not forcing somebody else that you need in the lineup to fight because you've got a guy like Nic Deslauriers who will fight. So I can understand him being in there, and I like his chemistry with Derek Grant and Carter Rowney, and I can see that being a valuable fourth line for the Ducks going forward. I just think the Ducks need another guy, and they have Kiefer Sherwood and guys like that they can plug in for games where they don't necessarily need him. I think that's all. That's the only thing I have.
I would say that, yeah, like Kiefer Sherwood, he's a fourth line guy that I'd like to see play a little bit more. But just once again, I feel like Deslauriers hasn't been so negative that we're looking for someone's got to get on that fourth line to really kind of help that line out, because that line's doing better than I would have thought this year. So if it's working, hey, just keep it going. And if it eventually stops working at some point, then you scratch him and you bring someone else in, or you try and drop him through waivers. Maybe someone claims him. It's no love loss on that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and complain about $1 million. Like, it's it's just the same level of I don't want to say disbelief, but just the same level of criticism I had when they signed him in the first place. We all kind of sat here and said, why? Like, that was, and I guess I'm a little bit less on that train as I was when he first got signed, because we've seen what he can do and the value he can provide to the team this year, and how much he's committed to this team despite them being bad. So you kind of, he's one of those guys that everybody loves. Like, fans love a guy like that who works hard every night, goes out there, gets in a ton of fights, and just plays for the team. The guys in the locker room love that. The fans love that. Obviously, Bob Murray loves that. So to bring a guy like that back, you can't complain, especially when it's only $1 million a year. And if he starts playing like shit, just put him in the press box. Like it's $1 million. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and to your point, everyone loving him, fans included. They, when they played Montreal in Montreal, that was his first game. They had a nice little tribute to him. Fans, know him, like him, that sort of deal. So, those types of guys, it's good to kind of keep on there. Same thing with like Grant. You don't quite know why, but for us Ducks fans, everyone loves Derek Grant, and we just absolutely love it. It's not going to blow up the world, the NHL or anything, although he's having a good season. It's just like, it's just that guy. He works hard, he does well, and you enjoy him. So I think he's on that same level.
Last thing we'll follow up here with is speaking of players we enjoy, and this Ducks player would be at the top of most people's list. It's Ryan Getzlaf. Eric Stevens had an article recently. I guess I say recently. This is probably about a couple weeks ago now. But he chatted with Ryan Getzlaf about the possibility of him going somewhere else and chasing a cup with another team. And these were some of the quotes he had. He said, "Honestly, I have no desire to try and chase a cup somewhere else. I'd love to bring it back to Anaheim here before I retire. It would be awesome. Again, I can't predict the future and what's going to unfold here and what we're going to do. If he and Bob Murray, he's referring to here, ever felt that he needed to do something to move me, then he could come talk to me and we'd work through it." So he just I mean, this is typical. It's what we know from Ryan Getzlaf. He's saying, similar to what Perry said, if they wants to move me, I'll do what's best for the team, and we'll work something out, and we'll figure something out. But I don't want to go anywhere. I've won my cup. If I'm gonna win another cup, I want it to be here in Anaheim, and that's honestly what we want to hear from Ryan Getzlaf and what we expect to hear from Ryan Getzlaf, right? Like he's not gonna go anywhere. He has nothing left to prove. He's got a family here. He's been here for his entire career. Like, this is a guy who wants to retire as a Duck, and I fully believe Corey Perry felt the same way. You look at that interview when he came back here, when he was suspended, when Dallas was here. Like, he was in tears because he was talking about, reminiscing about, walking down the hallway and being in the locker room and not being able to go into the home locker room this time. He had to go to the away locker room. Like, Ryan Getzlaf is in the same boat as Corey Perry, if not even more connected to this team because of being the captain and being the face of the franchise for the last decade plus. So he's not going anywhere. There's no chance. And I don't think Bob Murray asked them. Like, they had to move Corey Perry for a variety of different reasons. They needed some salary cap relief. He wasn't playing well. It felt like it was just gonna happen. But Ryan Getzlaf is still playing well. He's the captain of this team. Like, there's in my opinion zero chance that Bob Murray ever comes up to him and says, "Yeah, man, we gotta get rid of you."
he's got a golden ticket, straight to jersey retirement. So this guy's not going anywhere. He doesn't want to go. He's always kind of said that. He takes pride in the fact that he's only been with one team. He goes, it does not happen that often, and I'm proud to be able to say, if someone's proud like he is of that fact, there's really no desire for him to go. And I remember seeing those, and if any of you go and you're on Facebook or anything like that, you see something from NHL trade rumors. They were laying in like Ducks looking to move Getzlaf. I'm all, I was like, it's clickbait to the max. But people started like commenting. There was like, no, this can't happen. Oh, I will burn my jersey if this happens. I'm like, people, hey, it's NHL trade rumors. The only time they get it right is when they post something that happened 2 days ago. Like, that already happened, then they post it. Anything that hasn't happened, they are just making people panic. But, and I ended up having to, I got in that conversation with people. It's like, he's not going anywhere. He doesn't want to. He loves it here. This fits his style, his personality, laid back, and he's woven into the community as well. So I mean, there's just no real way the Ducks would do it. I don't see. Like I said, Bob Murray is probably on strict instructions. Do not do it unless we are getting McDavid or something, or just something beyond crazy. And then at that point, you could go up to say, "Hey, listen, we're getting McDavid." It's like, all right. I'll go to Edmonton. I'll be back next season. I'll retire.
I mean, I have no doubt there would be some interest in Ryan Getzlaf if the Ducks were going to eat some salary. I think there would be tons of teams who'd be interested in him as a second-line center because of the quality of play he still has, right? Like, he's still a very good player, and he's still one of the best players in the Ducks and one of the best passers in the league, and you shelter him in a successful team, and I think he would do really well. But there's no chance in hell that he moves unless Bob Murray comes to him, like you said, and says, "Hey, man, like, we have an offer that we just can't refuse." I don't think there's ever a situation like Corey Perry where they go to buy him out. There's no point. There's no need salary cap wise to go do that. You don't want to hit yourself with two of those buyout hits with Perry and Getzlaf. Maybe the discussion where it gets difficult is when his contract is up and you have the discussion of re-signing him, what that becomes at that point. Because if he's still productive, what do you do? Do you do the Joe Thornton $7 million for 1 year, or do you go a different route and you do less for a couple more years? Right? Like, that's where I could see it get a bit difficult. But the relationship that Bob Murray and Getzlaf have, I think that conversation will be pretty easy.
It's too strong. It will be. And and Getzlaf even says he's not going to play into his 40s. I mean, that only gives him maybe a couple more years. I don't think he's out chasing dollars. So he'll try and get something. Once again, that's probably going to be more of a home discount. There's fair market value for what he does. He'll probably come in less with that. That helps the team out. And at this point, he's already accepted that transitioning role into I'm going to go down in that center depth chart, but I'm still good enough, and I can teach the guys coming in so that they are better prepared to try and do what I've been able to accomplish and have that longevity in the league. So, he's a team player through and through, loves the organization, the fans, the ownership, So, and even then, I think even if there was something overwhelming, Bob Murray still wouldn't make it unless he got Getzlaf saying, yes,
I guess
this
it has
is
to
all
say
right.
yes anyway. He
Yeah,
has to,
that's true.
in
But I
any
would say,
trade, he
like,
has
out
to
of
say yes.
common courtesy, like,
Yeah.
even if he didn't have to, it's like, listen, you don't have a no trade, but we have this offer, but we're not going to make it if you
Right.
say no. You
Yeah.
get that opportunity.
You look at these comments and you know, and you don't even have to look at these to know this, but Getzlaf will do anything to make this team better and to help this team move in the right direction for the future. And like you said, you summed up perfectly. I don't think he's the guy who's going to get stuck on money. I think when it comes down to a contract discussion, he'll say, like Bob Murray, what can you guys do? Like what can you do for my contract that works for the team and puts you guys in the best position? If it's $5 million, it's $5 million. If it's three, it's
1
three.
million.
If it's one, it's one. Like I don't think Ryan Getzlaf's going to get too caught up on that. He's in
I think
his
it'd
mind.
be
There's
insult
no.
if, like, hey, listen, we're going to pay you the same as good old Nic Deslauriers
Yeah,
over here.
and that comes into Bob Murray's approach, I think. But honestly, I don't think Getzlaf gets too caught up in that. Maybe he gets offended if you come to him with $1 million to start. But if there was a good explanation behind that, say, man, we're trying to go after this guy in free agency, and we need $6 million to go after this guy. That leaves us one for you, and leaves us to give us about one of space. I mean, you could spin it a million different ways. We don't know how it's going to go, but he doesn't seem like a guy who would get caught up too much on money. And like you said, mentoring the young guys, Operation brings up in the chat, like Getzlaf is kind of the perfect mentor for Trevor Zegras, a guy to be around, one of the best passers in the league. Zegras is slated as one of the premier passing talents to come into the league for the last little bit here. It just kind of makes sense for Getzlaf to be that guy to mentor Zegras in the first few years of his career, and honestly, that could benefit him immensely. If Getzlaf has the last 2 years of his contract here and whatever he has after that to kind of be around and be that mentor and that leader presence for Trevor Zegras, it could be invaluable. So I think Getzlaf wants to do that too. I think he wants to be that guy for these young guys, and he wants to set the Ducks up in the best possible way for them to succeed when he's no longer playing anymore.
Yeah. It's all good things. We are absolutely fortunate that we've got him when we did and for as long as we have.
And when he's done, easy Hall of Fame for me, easy jersey retirement, like everything. He'll get it all. There's no question about it. He's going into the Hall. His numbers going up there with Scotty and Timu and Paul. Like it's a given. And then I think Perry eventually gets there, but there's no question with Getzlaf. It's an easy one there. Hopefully he gets to be around if the Ducks bring a cup in the next 3 or 4 years here. I don't know if that's if that's gonna happen, but
we'll see. Crazier things have happened.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see him get a send off like that where wins the cup in his last year and says, "All right, guys."
Kind of like that Teemu Selanne fairy tale.
Yeah. All right, guys, I'm done. That's it. I'm not coming back. Right. So.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it. That's it for the show. We're glad we were able to get back here. We've been missing the show. We apologize to you guys who listen to the show on a regular basis, and even anybody who just started listening to the show. We kind of disappeared for almost a month there. A lot of different things going on.
Not by choice. Yeah,
no, for sure. We've tried to schedule a show here and there, pretty much since the beginning of February. But we've had different things in our personal lives that have come up, and then, like I said, I've been sick for the last 2.5 weeks, which has been really tough for us to schedule shows, because usually with the three of us, if one of us is down, there's a cover there. But when one of us is down for 2.5 weeks, if one thing comes up in somebody else's life, we can't record a show. So
back off.
No,
but that was aggressive.
For real, we appreciate you guys coming out here, back on the live show, and anybody listening to this after the fact for sticking around. We're planning on being back more often now that I'm back, and hopefully Pat's back soon. Hopefully he's not out for 2.5 weeks and he can get on one of these shows heading up. Because it's ramping up to be busy. We expect the Ducks to do something at the trade deadline coming up. Nonetheless, we'll have trade deadline stuff just to talk about anyway. And the Ducks are heading into the final quarter of their season here. So it'll be interesting to see how the last little bit goes here. But we'll be around. We should hopefully be recording a show sometime midweek coming up here, depending on the Ducks games and the news that comes out to cover the next couple games. And then hopefully back onto that regular schedule of around around Wednesday, Sunday, depending on Ducks games. But stay tuned on social media. We'll be back. We'll be back a lot more often here. And thanks again, guys, for sticking it out and coming back to the show.
Glad to be back.
All right, take care, guys. We'll see you midweek next week.
Bye, guys.